Hello and welcome to my series of podcasts about people with purpose. So on today's episode, I'm joined by Helen Fooks of Vue IT Training, a Kent-based business providing high quality IT training, both in person and online. Helen has literally trained hundreds, if not thousands of people over the past 2 decades, helping individuals and businesses take their IT skills to the next level. It's fair to say Helen is an expert on all things IT, but is also known as the go-to expert when it comes to training in Office 365. So Helen's purpose is all about helping businesses use technology efficiently and ultimately to streamline their processes and systems, allowing them to spend time on growing their business. In her words, it's all about making a difference, and nothing more satisfying when teaching and seeing the reactions of her students when it all clicks into place. No pun intended, with the old click of the mouse there. So welcome, Helen. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And how are you feeling today?
I'm great. Thanks very much, Graham. It's really good to be on here.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good to see you. And as I sort of briefly mentioned there, I do have a massive interest in IT. I'm a little bit of a geek. I'm not calling you a geek, obviously, but it is something that fascinates me. And I know how much what you do behind the scenes and how you help other businesses. So just for anybody listening, if you could just sort of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit of how you got to do what you do.
Well, Graham, you already said quite a bit of it, but just to add to that, so yeah, 20 years ago, when computers were first sort of on the scenes, I was faced with the fact that I couldn't use them. I was crap. And I would go to use a computer and they'd put it on your desk in front of you and you'd be like, I've got no idea. And that's where my starting point was. And then I thought, well, it shouldn't be like this. And I began to see what they could do and how much they could help people. But you've got to know what to do to get to that point. So I think very early on, I felt that I didn't want people to be in that position where they just didn't know how to use them and they couldn't
Mm-hmm.
work it out. So I've always been in kinds of jobs where, I was the go-to person, and if you had a Word problem or an Excel problem, people would start asking you. And it was only when, in the 90s, God, this sounds ages ago now, but nobody used a computer and everyone had to be trained from scratch. And we had 2-day courses. We used to spend half an hour teaching people how to use a mouse. You can't imagine that nowadays, can
You
you?
wouldn't
Having
even
to
think of it,
say
would
to
you?
people, yeah, this is how, and there are some people who are still in that position. There's nothing wrong with that. But at that time, everybody was in that position. No, yeah, there were people out there most of the people out there had never used a computer before. Um, we'd spend half a day talking about it. This is how it works. This is what it does. So that was a lot of what, when I first started as a trainer, my job involved, because it was completely new. And in those days, a lot of stuff didn't work properly either. So you'd find you were constantly trying to fix issues, or you'd turn a load of computers on in the classroom and nothing would work. So there was a lot of issues there,
Yeah, I
with
can
the earlier
imagine.
version of Windows. And I must admit, I did think, well, in 20 years' time, I won't be able to do this because we won't need to do it. And that's not been the case because the technology is always changing, it's growing, and it is evolving, and we've got to learn how to evolve with it. We've got to learn to get the best out of it. It's no use using Word and Excel like we did 20 years ago, because that doesn't
Mm.
work. A lot of people did a course 20 years ago and have never updated their skills, and a lot's changed since then, and it should have changed. It doesn't stand still. So yes, I'm still very much, I mean, we don't tend to have 2-day courses now. It tends to be a lot shorter. But one thing I do in the business is I focus on what people need for business. And I think
Mm.
that's where training's moved on. It's not about sitting in a classroom, listening to someone at the front teaching you about something you're never ever going to know, and drone, drone, drone. It's about, right, what can we tell you that will make your data work for you, or that will make your policies, and processes that you're storing in Word work for you, or if you're doing a presentation in PowerPoint, how can you make those interesting? PowerPoint has got a bit of reputation, death by PowerPoint, and actually PowerPoint is really powerful, but people don't use the tools in it, and that does frustrate me because there's so much in it. It doesn't have to be bullet points. It doesn't. It's a great picture editor. It's a great basic graphics tool. Obviously not on the same levels as some of the Photoshops and stuff like that. But if you're doing basic posters, if you're doing Facebook posts, or if you're doing just putting graphics together, it does the job. It is, and it's off the shelf. So yeah, it has got that. It has things have evolved, and there's a lot we can do that people aren't aware. Probably most people only use about sort of 5 to 10% of what the Office 365 packages actually do.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, how did you learn? I mean, did you go on courses, or you kind of were you self-taught?
Right, I'm gonna have to tell you this. So when I first started as a trainer, they send you on a course, and they said to me, "We want you to go on a word introduction course." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, oh, God, I'm going to learn nothing." There's 2 days sitting there twiddling my thumbs. So I went along in this course, and it's obviously run by the people I was working with, and I thought, "Oh my God, how much did I learn?" I've been using this 5 years, this package, and I did not know half the stuff. And I thought I knew a lot, and I
Yeah.
didn't. And that was the most basic level. And from that point onwards, I just thought, actually, let's go digging. And every time, and that's what I do in the software. We go digging for, we're problem solving. We're looking at ways things work. We're looking at, okay, you want to do this. How can you get the computer to do what you want it to? So it's saving you time, and you're not spending, you know, hours and hours every month doing that same task.
Mm.
Is so yeah, so I had to go on courses initially, and now there's a lot more out there. There's a lot on LinkedIn, there's a lot on YouTube. But what I do, and I you could go and watch YouTube, and you can get everything I do on YouTube. But the problem is you'd have to watch about 300 hours to get the bit you need. And
Yeah.
that's what I do. I say, actually, I can tell you the bits you need to know without spending 7 hours on YouTube. And then that's probably, the time saver.
Yeah. So I mean, I've heard that before with for me, photography. When people talk about photography, so, well, a lot of the things that I can share and teach, it's done in a much more focused way. Whereas, as you say, you're saving all that time searching online, looking for all the answers. I'm probably as guilty as the next person, and I will go off on YouTube looking for those things, waste a couple of hours, come back, fix that little issue, and then now I've got to go. But there's another issue comes up, so I do
Yes.
I do get that. I do get that.
And sometimes I think it's nice to be curious. It's nice to go and check things out.
Yeah,
But it is a case of trawling through the information on YouTube. It is,
yeah,
what's the right video? And you might watch 20 minutes of it before you find actually it doesn't cover what you want to know. It
yeah,
is. We could learn anything we could rewire our house on YouTube, couldn't we, really?
yeah,
You can learn
yeah.
anything. You can't, but you've got to have the expertise.
In terms of your training, obviously you've spent, so that is, I mean, I take it that's how your love of training has come about. You've gone on these courses, and then you felt, well, actually I can now share this with other people, and
Also, I did spend so before I was trainer, I was worked as a PA for a long time, and that kind of taught me about the kind of documents, the processes that go on
sure.
in day-to-day life, and I think a lot of it was trying to improve on those, and seeing how a bad process or a bad system can just delay you so much. So I think a lot of it came from that. And then, having a bit of time, I worked in HR for a bit. So the whole database, the whole lists and pulling information out. And again, I've seen bad data, and I've seen bad systems, and it really can just slow you down and even break your business, because the information you're not getting back is not correct.
Mm. Yeah, it's. I mean, it's becoming even more so. I mean, have you seen what changes have you seen? I mean, obviously you've been doing this for 20 years. What would you say is the biggest kind of trend or change that has been happening throughout that time?
I think there was a more so for a long time, we've worked on, so if you think of your email, I always send an email to you and then you would forward it on to someone else and
Yeah.
somebody, and there's that kind of very linear approach. And what they're trying to do with the introduction of Microsoft Teams is kind of store things by a more project based. So basically you all sit in that, you have a subject or a project or a task, and that all goes in the same place, and all the files, all the people, all the meetings, everything is kept in one place. And so I think we're trying to go away from a very like send an email round to everybody to a more kind of focused group approach where everyone can access the files. And that's the other big development, the shared files. you know
Mm.
um the idea is that you, in theory, you shouldn't have 20 copies of the same file, because you're always working off a live file and anyone can access it. You don't any longer get that problem where you'd go to lunch and someone's got the file open and you can't open it. So
I know
so that
that.
would
Yeah.
put that on hold for another 3 hours. It depends on how long your lunch is, but that was always a big problem. Somebody would go out for a meeting, they've left the file open on their computer and nobody else can get into it. That doesn't happen now. Anyone can get into it, anyone can update it. The file is live. That brings other issues, other training issues, because obviously you have got to, staff have got to understand that you're working off a live file. You've got to treat it differently. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get the backups back. You can, but you've still got to be a bit careful. You have. But yeah, I think that's live files and things like Microsoft Teams are probably the biggest changes that we've seen for a long time.
Yeah. Where do you think that's going? What's coming next? What's your
I,
predictions?
I'm hoping that companies will move away from the having um, the loads and loads of email system, and come into a team system which allows them to communicate through Teams. I think that documents will just exist as one document and everyone will go into that, and we'll share stuff much more. It's a long way away, but hopefully it, because
Hmm.
also we haven't got endless storage. So if you have a copy of a file and then someone else has a copy of a file, then someone else, and then those copies start to make up huge amounts of storage. Now you multiply that by a corporate organization,
Mm.
you've got loads. So in order to reduce that, we need to be sharing files more. We do. And also I think video will start to play a much bigger part than it does now. Microsoft have got Microsoft Stream, which is brilliant for recording meetings. It stores all your meeting recordings, so you can easily access them, and maybe that will start to become more part of it. But already, there's a lot of developments out there. Microsoft Forms, and I know Google do a Google Forms. No longer do you have to get people to fill in paper forms or print one off on Word. It can all be automated, and
Mm.
that's easy to set up. If you've got Office 365, you've got Microsoft Forms. It's just so easy to use.
I think from what I've noticed, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm seeing this move towards more cloud-based services like Office
Yeah.
365 and the Google products. The idea of going down to WH Smith's to buy a piece of software, that seems to be long gone nowadays.
You should, if you haven't got a cloud system, be it, I mean, obviously our specialism is Office 365, but yeah, it could be Dropbox, it could be iCloud. If you haven't got one, it's something you really seriously need to think about moving to. If all your files are still on your C drive of your computer, you seriously need to think about getting a cloud system. And even worse, I still come across people who save their files on USBs. Please, if you're out there and you're saving your files on USBs, please talk to me, because that is the worst thing that can happen. Those USB sticks can get
Hmm.
so easily corrupted. And if that's
Really?
your only copy of your files and something happens to that, that's gone. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a copy on a USB. I'm saying don't make that your only copy. And I have come across people who still put their stuff on there.
That's really interesting. That's a good point, because something that when I was, well, I am a photographer as well, but I used to get requests for, can I have the pictures on a
Mm.
USB? So I would, yeah, more than happy I would do that. But what I found over the years, less and less people are asking for that because some computers don't even have USB ports on them
Yeah, I
anymore.
know. No,
So
I still do come across people with their storing their stuff. I came across one the other
wow.
day, and they still had their stuff on USB, and I'm like, no, no, you need to move it over onto, some kind of cloud-based system.
So that it's backed up.
I mean,
Yeah.
what you've got to think about is how much do we spend, you personally, how much, and you don't need to answer this with a figure, but how much do you spend on backup? Probably
Well, yeah,
not
I
a
do
lot.
because yeah,
Yeah,
but
but
it's not a
not.
lot, you know.
But then you compare that to how much a company like Microsoft or Google or spend on backing up your files on their server. And that's why you might understand that a cloud-based system is important. So I think it's
Yeah.
important to have your own backup. Don't get me wrong. And I think what you were saying, Graham, especially with your photos and stuff, you must back them up. But also have stuff on the cloud because they have their own systems as well.
Yeah, that's good for, and that's something I think I'll add that because I've always encouraged my clients to do that anyway. Just to like
Mm.
make sure that okay, I'm supplying on a USB. Make sure you back it up and make sure I do. When I have a whole system when I've done a shoot, it goes into this drive. It backs it up onto that drive. I have about 3 or 4 different copies. Then it gets uploaded to a cloud-based system as well because
Yeah.
if my computer goes down, I can't take the risk where I've got clients' files on there. And that's the same for any business. If you've got confidence, especially the whole idea of data being such a powerful thing these days, it's probably almost like the most valuable commodity, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And at least if it's on Office 365, you have got some kind of security there. It's not on a memory stick that anybody could get hold of or something like that or get into and things like that.
Brilliant. So let's talk about your business a little bit. So you,
Yeah.
you obviously you were working for someone, you then started training people, and now Vue. How did Vue IT training come about?
Well, it was started off as a general training company, and it used to do a lot of leadership, management training. And the lady who used to do that side of it took a step back, but I carried on with the IT side of it, the Vue IT training, because that had always been my specialism.
Brilliant.
So it just kind of and we've stuck with that. A lot of the training was face to face before COVID, and we used to go into offices and we used to have people come to us, and we would do like a little training course, and that was great. So yeah, that was my initial way of doing things. Obviously, over the last 6 months, it's changed quite drastically.
Mm,
It has. We've gone online, and a lot of people say, oh, isn't it easy, your computer training company going online must be the easiest thing on earth. And actually it's been quite difficult because I
really?
wanted to give people a good course. I wanted to give them, I didn't want to talk at them. I wanted to give them value, and I wanted to
Mhm.
make sure they learned something. So I have rewritten the way I've done things. I've looked at how we plan it, how I sit down, and what I've included to make it sure that they get value out of it. We used to do day courses. We now do 2 hourly courses, and we tend to be more focused. In some ways that's quite good because we can say, right, so the other day I did a course on VLOOKUPs. A company wanted to specialize in VLOOKUPs, and we spent 2 hours on that, and we were able to do lots of practice. We were able to use some of their examples so the staff were familiar with their data. And it's really good because we could record it, and they've got that recording to go back and review. So actually there were some really good things coming out of this.
Mm.
And you could do really focused training on it. And we're starting to use a lot of the tools on Teams and Zoom to be able to get more out of that training. So yeah, I've completely rewritten everything we've done, and we're just trying to give more value to our customers.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, what I was picking up from there, so your courses, or I'm sort of assuming here, you do a mixture. So you have like kind of off the shelf courses, or is everything bespoke, or is it a mixture of the two?
I have off the shelf. So if somebody said, "Oh, yeah, we want to do Excel introduction," I'd kind of be able to sort of pick up the key topics they'd need to know. But then
Yeah.
there's sometimes when you get the more difficult bits of Excel, I take Excel as a good example, like pivot tables or VLOOKUP, and you might just want to focus on that and say, right, we're going to do a course on pivot tables, and that's all we're going to concentrate on, and that's really good because that means they haven't. Because sometimes and we've all been on training courses where we kind of just, there's so much information and we're
Mhm.
thinking, oh God, I'm never going to take all this in. So if you can just focus on one aspect, and sometimes I say to companies, right, let's use, if you've got some practice data we can use, so they're familiar, names and stuff are made up, the headings and stuff they're familiar with, and then we'll use that, and then it's not alien to them, and they can
Mm,
start to see how that could be useful in their job.
mm.
Sometimes we get quite specific where companies want to know, like, we've got this problem and we're trying to work it out. I'll try and work with them and we'll find an answer, to see if Excel can do it, or sometimes it can't. It's not the be all and end all. There are times when it's not the right tool, but most of the time, we manage to come up with a solution, and I think that's what we're trying to do.
That's brilliant. I just want to go back to, you mentioned COVID. I mean, obviously that's affected so many people, some
Mm.
more than others. What was the initial kind of issues that you were seeing? Did you obviously lose courses? I mean, just tell me what happened.
So the day we went into lockdown, I think everything was cancelled. All my courses were cancelled.
Mm,
I had stuff in the diary. Basically, just the diary was just wiped clean. It was, and I had said to people, "Well, we can do it online," but it was very new to companies. The whole online training side of it,
no.
the Zoom, the setup, and also on top of that, and I totally understand this, they're having to work out what they're doing, and then
Mm,
sort of training falls to the bottom of the list because they're kind of having to focus on, okay, how we're gonna run. So that was sort of for the first few months. And I sort of spent a lot of that time reworking our courses so they would work online. And then sort of probably July time, I think a lot of companies have started to think, you know what, this could work. We could run this online, we could do it on Zoom, or we could do it on Teams. And stuff has started to, really started to take off.
good.
Microsoft Teams especially, because if you've got Office 365, okay, you have got and you've got Teams, you've got like a video, so video conferencing is such an old word, but you've got like a meeting software in there already. It's already there. You've got that ability to do that, plus so much more. So actually, you don't need to go and buy another meeting software package, because you can have within your team, you can record it, you can keep the recording in Teams because it lives in there, and you can put your files in as well. So if you've got files in the meeting, they can all be put in. So people are suddenly started realizing, oh wow, we've got all this.
Sure.
Why aren't we using it? So yeah, been doing quite a lot of Teams training. That was quite big. So yeah, going back to your point, after COVID, 3 months of not a lot, and then it got, quite busy again, which is great.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to hear. I mean, I'm seeing the same. I'm seeing businesses starting to move again. I know there's still a lot of fear around, but I'm a very much of a positive mindset, so I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, that's it. We like to keep positive, don't
Yeah,
we?
absolutely.
It's
It can only.
important. It's important in business as well to keep on the positive side of things.
Yeah, yeah, it plays a big part with me and my business and how I approach things, having that mindset, the wanting to help. I get the feeling that's where you're about as well, helping
Mm.
these businesses with their IT. Is it, I mean, obviously you do specialize in Office 365. Is there any
Yeah.
other sort of programs
Um,
you work on as well?
no, I tend to sort of focus on Office 365.
Right.
We have, and there are a few like slightly, a couple of other packages we've sort of covered, like Access, Visio, Project. Again, also be in Microsoft. And we do a bit of Zoom as well, meeting facilitation.
Hmm.
So that's something that we've started doing again since COVID happened. So we will, if you've got a big conference or something, we can facilitate the meeting, sort the breakout rooms out, record. Because actually, and then this is one thing we cover on the Teams training as well. A lot of people, they think they're holding a meeting, they've got a lot of people in the meeting, so they're trying to chair the meeting, and then they're trying to look at the chat, and then they're trying to let people in and out, and
Mm.
you've got someone on the dog's barking in the background, and you can hear them eating their dinner because the microphones pick up everything, and they kind of can't find the mute button. And actually, when you have that many people, I think a lot of people hadn't realized how difficult it is to facilitate
Yeah,
and to chair. And one thing I say to people, even if you've got small groups of Zooms, sometimes it's worth saying to someone in your office, right, can you help with the if you can do the chat and the monitoring and the muting, and then I can concentrate on chairing the meeting and getting to the endpoints we need. And I think a lot of people with the meeting software don't realize that sometimes you actually need two people to do the job.
yeah,
um because yeah,
I totally agree.
because it's a lot of work trying to do everything and manage the meeting as well.
Yeah,
And then you need to remove any troublemakers, so you've got all of that going on. Yes.
yeah. No, I know what you're saying. I do work with a charity, and I don't chair the meeting. We
Mm.
have the directors sort of would run the meeting, but I facilitate it. So I'm quite often managing the waiting room and the chat
Yeah.
and seeing what's going on and making sure that everybody has been heard who wants to speak and things like that. So and it does work so much better that way. So
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
I
and
mean,
I think that would be
great
my tip
advice.
tip to people. If you have got a Zoom or a lot of people on a call, get someone else to help you, because you don't spot the things in the chat as well, because someone will put a question in and you'll miss it.
Yeah, no, it's
You
really, really good point.
It is, or
Fantastic.
you'll realise they've not got their microphone on. That's the other.
Well,
That's the other
it's all,
option.
I mean, that's something I'm sure you've seen a lot. Is that the language has changed over the last 6 months? We have these expressions like zoomed out and your mute button. It's
Yes.
sort of a really common thing to see
Yeah.
now. Everybody's sort of, oh, it's the mute button, and we still do it. We still do
Yes, I know. We still, and even I know full well where the mute button is. The amount of times I've been talking and they're going, I can't hear you.
it. We still do it. It's not okay. 6 months is a long time, but it's maybe not quite long enough yet for us to be
No,
really ingrained.
no, it isn't.
I'm sure.
I'll get the hang of it eventually. I
Yeah.
will.
That's brilliant. So I just wanted to know a quick question. So obviously you're the you run the business, but you say that there's a we. I mean, do you have a team of people? How does it work? Do you have other people that help you or?
So as a trainer, you can't know everything, and there's so many other topics out there. So
Mhm.
I have people that I ask to, who train other subjects. So if somebody comes
Gotcha.
in, so Microsoft Project, for instance, I'm not an expert in that. So I would have someone else I could ask to do that, or access. If you start to get into the really kind of technical side of access, there's certain things I can't do, so I get other people in there, because I think you can't be specialist in everything. You
No.
can't. So I think it's important, and I tend to stick with a Microsoft. But if somebody wanted Google or something like that, or Google Sheets, because that's come up and coming, that's
Hmm.
really improving all the time. And you can do quite a lot. You can do most of the things you on Google Sheets and a bit more. So there's other people I would get into to help that with that.
But ultimately, it's
Yeah,
you.
ultimately, I'm afraid it's me. You've got to put up with
Me too.
me. Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. I mean, you've built this yourself. I mean, have you had any sort of mentors or help along the way? That's kind of anybody that you want to mention that's kind of driven your business or you to get where you are
A
today?
couple of things. Yeah, I guess I'm involved very much with the ABC networking group, which is fantastic, and they're a lovely group of people. You know, they're nice. The trouble is, and I don't know if you find it, Graham, sort of working on your own, you don't tend to get that you know, environment when there's lots of people around. So sort of having something like ABC is a bit like, you know, your version of the office or something. Probably not of all the politics, um but yeah, so there's things like ABC, and I'm in the MAD group that Ash Lawrence runs, and I've got to say
Uh-huh.
that's really good as a sort of business planning group. You know, if you want to ask questions, or you know, we have like a session every week, and like a motivational session, and that really kind of gets you focused and gets
Brilliant.
you, yeah, I think that those two things have really, in the last 6 months, have really helped me, because I can see that, you know, it would be easy for me to have said, do you know what, I'm just going to go and get a job in a supermarket or something because there's no work
Yeah,
coming in. But I think those two have helped me keep going and keep that motivation up. It's been
yeah,
really, really important. And also, like little, if you've got a problem, you can say, oh, you know, you put it on the group. I've got a issue like this, and there's always someone there of other expertise and experience. So I think
yeah,
those two things have really. I was always under the impression. So before I got involved with that, I was always under the impression that everyone did it by themselves, and then I realised that actually nobody does. We've
no,
always got, all of us have got need a mentor. Maybe there's a few people outside out there who do manage it by themselves, and well done to them if they do.
yeah. I think that that's a really, really key point about networking. I think that networking, certainly for me as well, has been a massive support to me throughout the whole 6 months, and before.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of sense of community. The I have a saying, I've said it many times on the podcast and online. The rising tide lifts all the boats in the harbour. What I mean by that is that if we contribute to that rising tide, the network that we are in, all the boats rise. We all come out of this together. And the businesses that stuck their head in the sand and haven't looked to their peers to sort of work together and collaborations or support or helping each other are the ones that aren't doing so well at the moment, unfortunately. So it's
Mm.
really, I think it's a really good point bringing that up, that that using those networking groups is has been key, certainly to me,
Yeah.
and obviously to yourself as well.
Yeah, no, they've been fantastic. You know, it does give you that support, even if it's just, you know, someone, you know, to speak to and sort of say, you know, oh, I'm having a bit of a rubbish day, and they're like, oh, come on, and you know, you just get that positivity back.
Yeah, yeah. It's as you say, it's not just about selling to people. It's about that community. It's
Yeah.
the what do they call it? The water cooler shot,
Yes, it is, isn't
gossip.
it? Yeah.
It's the opportunity to talk to other business, but also to talk about the weather and talk about each other and talk about what's going on. And I think that's what networking for me as a lone business owner as well. It does help.
And I think also when you're on a call, and one of the things with that, networking has become so much closer. You know, we've been talking to people all over Kent, and you know, that you wouldn't necessarily have got to meet through face-to-face networking, so it just brings the whole community much closer.
Yeah, it's interesting. What's your thoughts on that? You said face to face, and obviously most networking meetings happen online. What's your thoughts on that? Should we have a mixture of both, or where do you see the future?
Well, apart from the fact that I think everyone's about 3 inches tall, um so when I see you, Graham, I'm gonna be
Good
like, oh,
point. Good
you're
point.
looking a lot taller than I
Yeah.
thought. No, I think, you know, moving forward, when we're past all this COVID, or slightly improved in it, it would be great to have some face-to-face stuff back. I think a
Yeah.
mix. I can see the way forward as being as mix of the two, because you know, I think a lot of people miss that human contact.
Yeah.
But I do think the networking online will have a part it continues to play, and so I think there'd be a place for both.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
The only problem is I've the breakfasts have really gone downhill since it's gone up.
I miss some breakfasts. I do miss the breakfast.
I suppose it's good for the waistline, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So I end up exercising more now. So
Yeah. Yeah,
it
we
will come back.
don't get as many cooked breakfasts now.
No, no. But
Just
it's a
porridge.
fair point, and I'm with you on that. I think I agree. I think that a nice healthy balance of the two is going to be the way forward, for networking. So networking aside, we have you kind of briefly touched on what you see the future and training and stuff. I mean, what how else have you seen the industry sort of being impacted? And what I mean by that is, how are other businesses dealing with what's going on, and how have you helped them specifically?
One of the things I try and get people to do is plan. Now, a lot of people don't see planning and what you put into your computer have any correlation at all. Okay? But when you prepare your data, or you're preparing a document, or you're preparing a presentation, you need to plan it.
Hmm.
And they don't do that because we think, oh, we'll just go on the computer and the computer will do it. We don't think, oh, I need to plan out my presentation. I need to work out what to say. What pictures am I going to have? What words am I going to have? How am I going to tell that story? And one of the big things that I would like people to do, or I try and help my clients with, is plan things. If you have a spreadsheet, how can you make that spreadsheet work for you? And the concept of planning a spreadsheet is a lot of people don't do it. They don't think about, what do we need to put in it? What headings do we need? How are we going to organize it? If I put this information, and you need to be thinking ahead. I don't want this spreadsheet to be useful just for now. If I want to use it in 3 months' time, what do I need in
Mm.
it? So actually, we need to plan our data and our presentations, and it's getting people to think about that, and not to just sit down and start putting stuff in willy-nilly and not worrying about where it goes. I think that's probably the best way I could help people. Plan your data, plan your
Hmm.
presentations, plan your documents, and that will make your life so much easier further down the line. It sounds really ridiculous, isn't it, when you think
Well,
about it?
it's the simplest advice always often is true because it is simple, yet we don't do it.
No, no, we don't, do we? We don't think, what am I going to use this spreadsheet for? And how can I, make that work for me? Because
Yeah,
yeah, and I'm going to need to do, I've got a spreadsheet, I'm going to need to do an analysis on that. So I need it to be able to do a pivot table. So I need to include these headings. And yeah, that spending 20 minutes doing that before you put your data in is really important. That might,
yeah,
and then everything will start to work. It all drives, especially with Excel, it all drives back to how the data looks.
yeah. I'm probably fatal of or as guilty as that because I'll create a spreadsheet for one task, and then that's done now. And then a few weeks later, a similar task will come up, and I'll create a spreadsheet
No,
again from scratch. Why am I doing that? If I'd planned it, yeah, I get that.
And then sometimes you've got to ask yourself, especially now, what is the right tool as well? Because Excel might be right, but actually, they're introducing new little ones all the time. There's Planner, which is an Office 365, which is quite good for doing like tasks and things like that. Maybe you're better off using Planner. There's other tools coming in that you think, actually, do you know what? I might give that a go.
That's really interesting. I mean, how do people sort of work with you? Is it like companies come to you, or individuals come to you, or how does it work? How, if I was a business owner, how would I come up to you and say, I want
I
this?
mean, so I tend to sort of start off with just a chat and just a conversation, really. Okay, what is it you want to, and probably you're starting off with, what is it you want to get out of this?
Hmm.
That's probably your starting point, because if and even to the extent of, if we take a subject like Excel, I'd say, what do you want your staff, what do you want to know by the end of it? Um, and I also ask them why they want to know it, because if someone comes to me and says, "Oh yeah, I want Excel VBA," which is like the programming language, and macros, I like, why do you want that? Because is that going to do what you want it to? So it's
Mm.
really about a conversation about what their endpoint. Now, if they want to just be able to produce some a summary of their data to total it all up and to be able to kind of total up how many sales they had um, over different products, and that the answer to that is going to be a pivot table, then that's what we need to be focusing on. So I guess you kind of start from the end point. What do you want to get out of this? It might not necessarily be what they think. So somebody came up to me the other day. She said, "Oh, we've got this list, and I know we're not using it efficiently, and how can we use it better?" So one of our training is going to be on we're going to be using tables, we're going to be using sort filters. We'll probably look at doing some pivot tables with it as well. But yeah, start with the endpoint, have a conversation, and
Mhm.
that conversation might even be it will just get us started and get us to understand where the problem is. Because if we don't know the problem, I can train you in something, but it might not help. It is,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's that sort of that they might be asking for one particular thing, but
Mm.
actually, it's actually something else that they need
Yeah,
rather
yeah,
than
I
what
have,
they're
but
actually asking
yeah,
for.
yeah. And I think you can't do that without a conversation. I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes you get some companies do know exactly what they need, and then they know what their staff need. I because companies are very different. One of the things I try and do is bring in examples they'll understand, and often you'll get like some companies will send like a department along who all need a very, very similar thing. Other companies will have people who are, you know, maybe just wanting to get to a certain level. So it's so different from everybody's perspective. But I guess that's why I'm not offering an off the shelf solution. That's why I speak to people and find out what they want first.
yeah, yeah. I think I actually saw something on the line the other day about always start with the end in mind, which is
Yes. Yeah,
just
it's true.
sticking to what you've just said. Once it's like anything, it's like any sort of type of goal setting, isn't it? When you set that goal, then you can figure out what you need to reach it. It's
Yeah.
exactly the same principle, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Mm.
Start with the goal first, and then how are we going to get there? How are we going to achieve that goal?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And what we don't want is just churning out a load of training that they could have, sat in a classroom, or back to that YouTube example.
Yeah. I mean, you said about training in the classroom. I get the feeling that although you've had to change and pivot because of the pandemic of going online, I'm guessing that you would still love that whole experience in a classroom. What do you see as
Yeah,
the benefits from that?
I still love the classroom training. I
Mm-hmm.
really do. I have learned a lot from the online training, but I still and there are cases if someone is really really new or nervous, or when you probably need to be there face to face, because if you're really struggling, and these people might not be familiar with the keyboard, that kind of thing,
Yeah,
it can be very difficult to do that online. I would say that's at the very beginning part of learning computers. If you're not familiar with them at all, online learning, that initial point. But I would like to go back to face-to-face training, and at least do, some of the stuff on face-to-face training when the
yeah,
situation allows. But I think online training will carry on to be a big part.
yeah. So again, a bit like networking, you want to see that a bit of a balance between it. Obviously
Yeah.
you can do a lot online, but it's still that pleasure of being in the classroom.
Yes, that's it. That's it. And it's lovely to have, human contact, and especially when
Mm.
you've got quite a lot of people on there, yeah, we've got five. I mean, I do try and keep my classes fairly small. We tend to have 5 or 6 people. I'm not one for piling them high, because I think I'd rather people learn something than go
Mm.
away thinking, well, I spent the morning listening to not I didn't really learn anything because there were too many people in the class. That was one of the reasons I started doing what I did, and I went into business, because I did a lot of work for other companies, other training companies, and they'd try and cram like 18 on a class, and you would say to them, well, how's someone going to learn? Because I can't give enough attention to 18 people. Yeah, it's going to be very generic. And I didn't
Hmm.
like that. I wanted to be able to. So when they walk out that door or when they turn their computer off, at the end of the day, they get something out of it. And I don't feel I can do that with loads and loads of people.
You're right. It's having that concentrated, you've got much more attention, you've got more opportunities to ask questions
Mm.
than, as you say, cramming it all into lots of people all at the same time.
Some people also don't feel confident asking questions in a big group.
Yeah.
One thing I do say, there's no such thing as a stupid question because it's it's really hard to admit you don't know something, especially if you're with all your colleagues and they all know it,
Hmm.
and you've got to say, oh, actually, I don't understand this and I've never understood it. But if I say it, someone's going to. So I do try and pick up on that, and you'll get to know quite quickly what people know and what people don't know, and fill in those gaps. Actually, that's one thing I sometimes look at my training. I'm filling in gaps. So often there's gaps in their knowledge. So they'll know how to do something. They'll know A and they'll know C, but they can't work out how to get between the two. So
Mm.
I'm there. I will fill in those gaps, and I'll also tell people why. And when you know why, you remember it.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so it sounds like you've got a great approach, and I like that. What size businesses do you work? I mean, do you work with large organisations, small organisations, or is it a
It
bit of
tends to
everything?
be sort of so probably sort of a couple of large ones, yeah, mid sized businesses, and then a few people have just got sort of one or two, yeah, all sizes really.
You've got a whole range
Yeah,
of.
yeah. I mean, I suppose if you were say my ideal client would be someone who's sort of mid-size,
Mhm.
where you can kind of you've got quite a few staff, but you can kind of focus on the needs as well. So sort of a mid-sized company, but that I'm still. Do you know what I like about what I do? It's so interesting going to see other people's how other businesses work. It's
Mm.
so interesting. You go into a company and you get to. I mean, I know I'm only looking at it from an IT point of view. There's all other the Office 365, but you just get to see how the companies work. And it's so interesting, to talk to people and find out about it because that I think is what interests me about it.
I'm totally on the same page with that. It's
Mm.
it's why I do what I do as well. I love that, learning about other businesses, learning about the people behind the businesses. I just find that stuff fascinating.
Mm.
So it's and I got a real affinity with that. I really do like that approach. So in terms of I know you talked about USBs and we talked about cloud systems, and what other top tips, your top tip that you could share with us today in the current sort of situation that we're in for IT? What would you say
Mm.
is the best things to think about?
I would think about so plan your document,
Yeah.
plan your files, plan what you're doing. That's probably my top tip. Think about what you do before you do it. Um, and then this sort of relates back to the planning. So if you're doing Excel, plan your data. If you're having issues with something, think about how it's been put together. So what I'll do when I'm training or somebody's coming to me with an issue, with a problem, with a document, okay, I'll say to them, right, I'll look at it and I'll go, into where the different characters are, how it's been put together, what type of document it is. And sometimes the other thing is look at the screen. Okay, because somebody has taken the time to think about, if you take Word, for instance, they've taken the time to think about everything on the screen. So there are buttons that tell you what page you're on. There are buttons that tell you what font you're using. And there's somewhere that tells you where the indents are and the margin. So look at the screen. Just look at it. And also the other thing, so you got me started now, Graham. Um, is okay. So think of when you go into your computer, when you go into Word or Excel, think of it like your desk. Okay. So especially in Word, on your desk, you get something open. You might open your computer. You have your phone. You have your earphones now, don't you? They weren't needed a few months ago. Um, Word is the same. You think, right, okay, I'll get the document the right size, amount of people that have the document too small. I'll get this pane up because I need this, and I need to do a bit on um I need to do a bit on the navigating around. So get the bits in the right place, get your screen set up, and then you'll find it's a lot easier to work with. And use the zoom. In the bottom right hand corner, you've got a zoom bar. Use it. Make your document bigger or smaller so you can see it. Because a lot of people, they can't see their files. Or get yourself a pair of glasses. But yeah, things like that we don't look at what's actually in front of us. Oh, on Word, get your ruler up. If you go to the View tab, tick ruler, because the amount of people that work without their ruler and you've got no idea what goes on. Okay, I'll be quiet now. You got me started.
Well, I have to
Sorry.
say that you probably just described me. Yeah, I don't do. I just. I'm very much get the document up and go
Do you
for
look
it.
at the screen and go, I'm sure that button was there the other day. Where's the
I
button
lose
gone?
buttons. I,
Yeah,
I, I, I forget where things are sometimes. I think
yeah.
that's the thing. It's like,
You're like,
where did I find that
yeah,
again? I
I'm
can't
sure that
remember.
was on there.
Yeah, that's me. I'm sure that was. Yeah, I'm very much. What's the first? Shoot first, think later.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
yeah.
because
No, it's interesting to just spend a bit of time looking at your screen and thinking, right, is that set up the way I want it?
yeah, that's good. So from your just to recap, it's the planning is your number one tip.
Yeah.
Obviously, you talked about USBs and cloud storage, but I guess getting organized would be a way of
Yeah,
summarizing that
I
last
think
point
so.
about
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
just
getting
being organized
organized.
with it. Yeah,
Yeah. And then just getting your screen size right, getting your zoom right. And I tell you what else as well, because a lot of people are working from home on laptops, get yourself a second screen because
yeah.
it's really hard to work on a laptop screen. And I don't, you might not agree with me on this, but sometimes a proper mouse as well is quite useful. Sometimes the touch pads, if you're working all day on it, can be quite hard to use. Just from the point of view of moving about, dragging things. It's entirely up to you, but sometimes I find a proper mouse does help.
I'm with you on that.
Not the furry kind, by the way.
No,
So
I definitely not. But all
computer mouse.
seriousness, I'm like that. I can use a touchpad and I've got no
Mm.
problems with it, but I would rather use the mouse whenever I can. For me, also, I actually use a pen as well. I've got a pen because I
Oh, I
use that
love them, aren't they
for
brilliant?
for Photoshop and I'm editing. It's so
Yeah,
much easier to
they're
sort of
fantastic.
for doing fine work. But yeah, the mouse and the pen is the way forward for me.
Mm.
Touchpads, I, I, I don't like using them, but I will do. But yeah, it's a good tip.
Also, I think on the new version of Words, they've got a dictate as well. So if you're not one for typing out loads, there's a dictate option, which a lot of people might want to take advantage of.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot actually. I've
Mm,
seen various software getting better and better at recognizing
mm.
voices. And what we've talked about what you do now, and we've talked about how you got there. What do you see yourself going forward in the future as a business and yourself? Where do you see yourself going? What are any
Um,
plans that you might want to share
yeah,
with
I've got
us?
loads of plans. I'd love to be able to offer. So I'm looking at kind of moving to sort of have a bit of a I'll offer some self-led training to expanding the website so people can just go on and call up what they want, so they've got a kind of
Brilliant.
resource there, and possibly sort of on a membership basis, so people can go in and also ask questions, and then within that have sort of various training sessions as well, so we kind of end up with more of a resource rather than just sort of one-off courses, so we sort of it becomes a bit of a, oh, I've got a word problem, I need to go in, I'm going to ask this question, so they've got somewhere to go and ask a question. So
Mm,
yeah, we're just starting to get in there. We have got a Facebook group, Vue IT Training Hints and Tips, that I've just started up. It's a free group and people can join it, and if they've got IT questions, they can ask them on the group. If and it's just kind of nice general group, friendly group that I've started up, because sometimes there's a lot of stuff out there that people want to know.
brilliant. I mean, actually, that just leads on to a great question. How do we find you? Where do we find? How do we get in contact with you? what's the best way?
Okay, so I'm on LinkedIn. I am just as under my name, under Helen Fooks, or you can find me under Vue IT Training. I've got a Facebook group, also under Vue IT Training, and a Twitter. And also I'm on website www.vueittraining.co.uk, and there's the traditional phone. There is, you can pick up the phone and talk to me. I don't mind. I don't. So yeah, if you want to give me a call, I'm quite happy to speak. All our details are on our website.
So is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
Yes, we're looking at doing a lunch, or we are going to be doing a lunch and learn once a month. This month was all about Excel tables. Next month, I think we're probably doing OneNote, which is a really good system
Oh,
within Office 365 for taking notes. And then we'll do something different for December. So if you join our Facebook group, the Vue IT Training Hints and Tips, we can we'll put details on there about that.
brilliant. No, that sounds really interesting. And what day is that on? What sort of time is that happening?
It's Monday at 1 o'clock. It
Okay.
is, and I'll publish the dates for the rest of the year shortly.
Brilliant. Yeah, as I say, I'll put the links on the show notes and everything so that people can check that out. I know I'll be looking at it because, yeah, although I do know how my way around Excel, I'm sure I know nothing compared to what you know.
There's always stuff you can learn. I'm still learning.
Yeah, I
I
totally
think we
agree.
all are, aren't we? We're always learning. We're
The
never
best way
too
to be.
old. Never too old
Uh,
to learn.
nah, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that the day you stop learning, there's no point. Anybody that says they've learned enough is isn't worth talking to, as far as
No,
I'm
that's
concerned.
it. There's always more out there.
Yeah, always more. Helen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed chatting with you today. As I said, I've certainly got my geek on a little bit, talking about technology and IT and systems, and thank you for sharing your tips. Um, yeah, how have you found it?
Oh, it's been great, Graham. It's been really great chatting to you. I loved it.
Brilliant. Right. Well, in that case, I'll call it a day, and thanks again.
Thank you very much, Graham.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye.